So let's continue with our section 2 in part 3. See, before getting into the content, I like to encourage you to please go through the website, use this sign up page, and then register yourself onto this particular portal. Once you have registered, this needs to be manually approved by the administrator. Our KM team will give you the access in order to get the access of both recorded videos and the LMS part. So if you see, as part of part 3, EA part 3, we have close to 800 plus questions, and then you'll have a full length 3.5 hour exam that will be at your disposal, wherein you can go through the specific questions, and then you can access the real-time bookmarking, and then the real 100 questions part is where you can write out once you get the access. Okay. We have two sections, as you can see. One is enrolled agent, other is US tax practical preparation. So when you click on enrolled agent, you will understand it's taking time. Is it internet issue or internet is showing 70%? Is that? Okay. So as part of this, as I was explaining, EA part 3, once you get the access, you'll have this 50 hours plus recorded content, 800 plus MCQs, and multiple random access mock exams. You will be given unlimited practice tests, and we'll make sure you'll have a personal study planner, and mentoring sessions will be conducted by the KM team, where you can ask your personalized doubts. This will be conducted bi-weekly. Okay. So this login is essential because these MCQs and then the multiple choice, the mock exams, you will be given 3 mock exams at least for each part. Only if you are getting more than 80% every time, if you are going through the mock exams, only then you are ready to go for the final exam. So make sure you're accessing this particular login, and then solving these MCQs at least twice. Okay. So once you create a login, and then we'll approve from the backend, the KM team will take care. Your PTIN should also be created, and then the KM team will have your back right from PTIN application till your Form 23. Form 23 is where you'll once you are done with your EA exam, Form 23 needs to be applied on pay.gov. So everything will be taken care by the Knowledge Hub team. So make sure you are logging in, and then I'll approve it from the backend. Okay. So let's start with the current section. We are done with unit 2, right? Last time. Last question. What is the last question? Okay. So please put the heading. Is it unit, can you please confirm, is it unit 3 or unit 4? Can you please confirm, please? In this section, is this unit 3 or unit 4? Are you done with 2 units or 3 units? Can you please go back? Unit 2 or unit 3? I think it's unit 3 units already done, correct? So this please put the heading as unit 4, legal authority and references. Legal authority and references. legal authority and references. Unit 4, legal authority and references. So please put the first question, what is Circular 230? What is Circular 230? What is Circular 230? So as I mentioned earlier in the earlier classes, Circular 230, the only problem is it is not being updated regularly. The last version that it is updated is as of 2015, 2014. So we are bound by Circular 230, but then if you ask, is everything updated as per Circular 230? IRS did not update the 230. The last update was on 2014. So they are still saying about the RTRP exam and all. So RTRP is no more active. In place of RTRP, there is a new program called AFSP, Annual Filing Season Program. So many other laws are also not updated as per Circular 230. But then, if you consider anything that we need to go by or we need to bound by Circular 230, okay. So let's please write the first question. What is Circular 230? What is Circular 230? What is Circular 230? First point, Treasury Department, Circular 230, so Treasury Department Circular number 230 extensively addresses matters of Treasury Department Circular number 230 extensively addresses matters of ethics, practice, comma, representation, and regulations, before the IRS. Next point, all practitioners who represent taxpayers, before the IRS are subject to the rules and regulations set forth in Circular 230. So what I am saying, whoever the practitioner, if he or she is representing the taxpayer before IRS, so we need to be bound by the rules and regulations that are mentioned in Circular 230. But then if you ask me if it is updated or not, it is still not yet updated. But then more or less the tax law, the code remains the same. But then that needs to be updated. It can happen anytime. So, but we are bound by, as an enrolled agent, as an enrolled practitioner, we are bound by Circular 230. Next point. Tax preparers serve an important role in US tax system, serve an important role in US tax system. As they prepare, comma, as they prepare approximately 60% of all tax returns filed. As they prepare 60% of all tax returns filed. Okay. So I'll encourage you to please go through Circular 230 in your I want you to please go through it once. Okay. All right. Just a minute. Done. So please write the next point. So I have given you the address here, Circular 230 in the URL here, Circular 230 form. You please go through, download the Circular 230 also. As I mentioned, you please download all the relevant forms. Under if you are going through part 3, all the forms, relevant forms, publications that we are mentioning, make a folder, download this particular publications and relevant documents onto that particular folder, and then before going for the exam, say 1 week or 2 weeks before, you can browse through each and every form number, so that it will be fresh in your mind. So Circular 230, all the relevant publications that we have mentioned previously also needs to be downloaded and kept in your folder. Okay. Next question. What is federal tax law? What is federal tax law? See, this enrolled agent exam that we are talking about is testing us only with respect to only federal structure, right? It is not testing us in state level. When I say testing us in terms of state level is, I'll explain. Okay. So any exam, EA. If you take part 3, SE part 3, so we have federal and we have state and we have county, right? In terms of, say, if you want to understand, this is like central in India, this is like state again in India, county is something like district. This is called local. This is called you can say local or county. So when we are testing out when we are giving the exam, we are being tested only in terms of federal. In EA exam, see, this structure that I have explained now is the federal structure. In US, this is a federal structure. Like if you want to compare this with, this is Delhi, okay, central. This is Telangana, right? This is Rangareddy. So when we are filing a tax return, we need to pay taxes to federal government, we need to pay taxes to state government, and we need to pay local and county. But each in US government, each structure has its own tax laws. So the federal tax law is something like central, and each state, how many states does US have? 50 states. So each state has their own tax system, their own tax law, their own tax brackets. Like California, New York, all those are very high tax brackets states. So people who are earning, say, around 200,000 or 1.5 crore to 1.8 crore in INR, if they are earning also there, they end up paying very high tax brackets there for state. See, for federal, everybody is same. Okay, but for state, there are states where some states are straight away tax free. Some states are tax free. Tax free meaning no state tax, but federal we need to pay. Even though you reside in a tax free state, federal is a mandatory thing we will have to pay. And then county and local. Okay, so I'll give you what are the acronyms for tax free states, and then you can as part of part 1 we'll understand what are the tax free states. Okay, like Florida, Alaska, South Dakota, Tennessee, Washington, this is like a short acronym that we'll go through. FAST NW, fast net worth. You must have seen the movie Fast and Furious, right, in English. So just remember the name. You need to get your worth. You need to improve your worth very fast. Your total net worth. Fast net worth. So FAST NW. FAST, what is F, what is A? I will give you all the acronyms. In these eight states will be tax free. The moment somebody is asking you what are the tax free states, you can straight away remember the acronym, and then F Florida, A Alaska, South Dakota, Tennessee, like that you can remember. I'll give you the acronyms and all as part of part 1 individual. So what I'm trying to say is, as part of part 3 or part 2 or part 1, we are learning about only federal state structure. Okay, federal structure. Not you should thank basically IRS that they are not testing you in terms of state. Why? For 50 states, each state has its own tax law. If they start testing you in state tax law, so will you be able to complete for all states? No. So we are trying to understand only from a federal structure point of view. Okay? Be it business, be it any entity, or be it individual, as part of enroll agent, how many papers we have? We have 3 papers, right? First paper talks about individual. Second paper talks about business entities and business, correct? So third paper talks about tax representation. In everything, we are trying to understand the federal structure point of view. Okay? So if you want to note down this particular page also, you can just jot it down somewhere, the federal structure, or if you are clear, it's okay. We have 3 structures basically. One is federal, other is state, third is county. Federal is like central, state is again state, county is county. So Delhi, Telangana, and wherever we are residing, Rangareddy. Okay, so let's understand this particular question. What is federal tax law? The internal revenue, I'll first explain what is federal tax law. We can start writing it down once I explain, please. So please remember this particular acronym IRC. So in the exam they can straight away ask you the question with respect to IRC itself. They may expand the acronym or not, but then we need to understand this particular tax jargon. So IRC is Internal Revenue Code. Okay. So what are we saying? Internal Revenue Code serves as the primary body of tax law in United States. So IRC is the primary body of tax law in United States, established by the Congress and published as Title 26 within United States Code. This particular Title 26 is called Internal Revenue Code. So if somebody is asking you what is Internal Revenue Code, it is Title 26 published by Congress. What is Congress? It is not our Congress, right? So the parliament there, people who are elected representatives there, they have two parties, right? One is Republic, another is Democratic. So either Republic will get elected or Democratic. Two major parties I'm saying. So it's like Senate. So
This is like upper house.
correct. So they will basically prepare the taxes. They'll prepare the tax laws. They prepare the tax law, and Department of Treasury will interpret that particular tax law and then execute. So as part of Department of Treasury, IRS comes under Department of Treasury. So people who are elected representatives, they make the tax law. IRS interprets and executes the tax law. वो बनाते हैं, ये execute करते हैं, right? So what are we saying? Remember this word Title 26. Internal Revenue Code, you just write remember the name, Internal Revenue Code, the moment it says, because in the multiple choice questions it will ask, Internal Revenue Code comes under, they'll ask Title 26, Title 31, Title 42 or Title 56. So you should remember the name, Title 26. Okay. So again, if you think Title 26 has everything, see, if we are saying IRC is a primary body and then Title 26 is created by Congress, so it should have all the tax law, right? But Title 26 will not have all the tax law, right? We'll have, as I've explained earlier, we have other relevant tax laws with respect to states. Each individual state, city, municipality will have its own tax law. So F bar, what is F bar? Heard of F bar or no? Previously you heard of F bar, right? So F bars and most international financial reporting laws are promulgated by the Bank Secrecy Act, a provision of Title 31. So what are we saying? Title 26 is a primary body, that is understood. Who are all the dependents? See, you are filing a return. As a joint return you are filing with your spouse, and you are claiming your two kids and your parents as dependents. So who are qualified as dependent, who is not qualified as dependent, everything is decided by this Title 26 code. As per that code that is already mentioned in that particular code, who will be qualified, who is not qualified. Like if somebody who is very age old person and then their income is very high, they have certain rules. Qualifying child, qualifying relative, all those terminology will be there to qualify as a dependent. So that tax law is all written in Title 26. Okay, but Title 26 is not the only thing that we need to consider as with respect to tax law, because each state has its own tax law, each municipality and each state will have its own this thing. So we'll have to consider the entirety in total. Same thing, F bar. F bar is foreign bank account reporting. F bar is
Foreign bank account.
what is foreign bank account reporting? Basically in a tax year, what is a tax year? No, not Indian tax year. US tax year ends on December 31st. See that particular year. See, the tax year you can choose either a calendar year or a fiscal year. There are two options one can choose in India also. See, somebody who chooses financial year, like the one that ends on March 31st in India, right? So some Marwadis or some big gentlemen like Reliance or Ambani's and all, they might not follow March 31st financial year. They'll come up with Lakshmi Devi कब रहता है वो तभी उनका start होता है year. So they might consider Deepavali. November 30th they close the books. They'll consider November 30th as financial year. That liberty is there. But it ends in November. See, usually March 31st it ends. So April 1st, March 31st is the financial year that we consider, right? So for fiscal, that is called fiscal year. Choosing your own tax year other than the calendar year is fiscal year, correct? So in US also, usually people choose the calendar year, the year that is ending with December 31st, correct? So from January 1st till April 15th, we will file the previous year taxes. Okay. So what I am trying to tell you is, in a calendar year, if you have sent more than $10,000 from US to any other bank, outside US, like you are working in US in Washington, and your parents are here, and you have sent $20,000 in that particular year to your SBI bank here. So if you have sent, if the transaction is more than $10,000 in a single year, you need to file F bar. That is F bar. It's a accounting. You are just reporting to IRS. There is no tax that is involved. What is F bar? Foreign bank account reporting. Tax file. It's not tax filing. It's just reporting. You are reporting to IRS that you have to, the worldwide income you are reporting, that I have sent so and so money to so and so bank. Why is it needed? In order to prevent money laundering, basically illegal activities of money, huge lump sums of money is going, lot of money trails are going in. See, a lot of terrorist activities happen because they'll be not monitored, right? So all the money what are coming in and what is going out, US Treasury needs to have an account. యూఎస్లోకి ఏమొస్తుంది మనీ, యూఎస్ నుంచి బయటికి ఏమవుతుంది మనీ అనేది ఒక ట్రాకింగ్ ఉండాలి వాళ్ళకి. మీరు కనుక వేయలేదు అనుకోండి, అదే పెనాల్టీస్ విల్ బి వెరీ వెరీ హై. మీరు కనుక చెప్పకపోతే యూ నీడ్ నాట్ పే ఎనీథింగ్. దర్ ఇస్ నో ట్యాక్స్ ఇన్వాల్వ్ ఫర్ ఎఫ్ఆర్. యూఆర్ జస్ట్ రిపోర్టింగ్ దట్ పర్టికులర్ ఈవెంట్ టు ఐఆర్ఎస్. బట్ దెన్ ఇఫ్ యూ డోంట్ రిపోర్ట్ అండ్ దెన్ లైట్లో ఏం కాదు అనుకుంటే, you will face both civil and criminal penalties. That we will learn in part 1. Okay, F bar is also part of part 1. So what I am trying to tell you is, F bar is not part of title 26. Again, F bar is part of title 31. So two things you remember. Internal Revenue Code, the moment somebody says it's title 26. F bar, somebody says it is title 31. So the question in the exam, they'll try to confuse you between these two titles. Both will sound similar. One is 26 and another is 31. So you can make a shortcut in your brain. Whatever comes like IRC 26. Some acronym. IRC is Internal Revenue Code 26. C6. Some logic you maintain. Because once you clear the exam, nobody will ask you. IRC 26. C6. Some mind mapping. Something should be there. Something which is not 26 is 31. Only two things exist. One is 26 and another is 31. ఇది కాకపోతే అది. సో 26 ఒకటి గుర్తుపెట్టుకున్నాను అనుకోండి, అది కాదు 31. సో ఐఆర్సి 26, C6 సి ఉంటుంది, జస్ట్ దాన్ని ఇట్లా చేస్తే 6 నంబర్ సి. సమ్ లాజిక్ యూ స్టార్ట్ రైటింగ్ యువర్ ఓన్. సో ప్లీజ్ రైట్ వాట్ ఈస్ ఫెడరల్ ట్యాక్స్ లా. What is federal tax law? The IRC serves as primary body of tax law in United States. In the United States, established by the Congress, and published as Title 26. You can write Title 26 in red color or green or gold, whatever color. Title 26 within the United States Tax Code. Title 26. Within United States Tax Code, known as Internal Revenue Code, known as Internal Revenue Code. Okay. Next point, not all tax law not all tax law not all tax law is located in not all tax law is located in Title 26. Not all tax law is located in Title 26. However, other tax law is promulgated. Promulgated is forming. Other tax law is promulgation is formation. Other tax law is promulgated by individual states. Other tax law is promulgated by individual states, cities and municipalities. States, cities and municipalities. So last part, FBARs and most international FBARs and most international financial reporting laws are as per Bank Secrecy Act, as per Bank Secrecy Act, a provision of Title 31. Understood, right? One is Title 26 and one is Title 31. Next question. What are IRS documents? And how does IRS guide the taxpayer? Same thing that I have explained earlier. The IRS administers the Internal Revenue Code enacted by Congress. So Congress makes the tax law. IRS will execute and implement the tax law. So what we are trying to say is IRS does not enact any tax statute. That is the job of US Congress, right? The IRS takes the specific of the laws ratified by the Congress and translates them into the detailed regulations, rules and procedures. So IRS produces several kinds of documents that provide guidance to taxpayers. So what we are trying to understand is what are the several documents that IRS prepares in order to give guidance to specific taxpayer. So if you are preparing yourself to file a tax return, you must have some kind of documentation to refer to if you have any query, correct? So last year you filed as MFJ. This year, due to high income, you want to file as MFS or something, like married filing separately. You and your spouse both are earning 200,000 and 200,000. So in order to reduce your taxable income and pay less number of taxes, you want to understand what exactly is the current tax law. So there should be a specific documentation that you need to refer to, right? All those documents will be prepared by IRS to give the taxpayer some kind of a reference. So what are the different documents that IRS provides in order to guide the taxpayer is what we are trying to understand. So the last point says it provides these kind of documents in the same order. See, we are giving you almost 6 documents. What are those? Treasury regulations, revenue rulings, revenue procedures, PLR, private letter rulings, technical advice memoranda, and IRS notices. These 6 are in the same order. When I say these 6 are in the same order, this is the order of preference. If you want to go through something like official documentation, first we need to refer to treasury regulation. Then you can refer to revenue rulings. Then you can refer to revenue procedures. Then you can refer to PLR, then TAMS, and then IRS notices. This is the order of sequence. If you want to understand any tax code on that specific subject, first you refer to treasury regulation, then revenue ruling, then revenue procedure, then PLR, then TAMS and IRS notices. So what are all these? We'll try and understand everything in detail. So this is the sequence is what I'm trying to tell you. You understood, right? Please write. What are IRS documents and how does IRS guide the taxpayer? What are IRS documents and how does IRS guide the taxpayer? What are IRS documents and how does IRS guide the taxpayer? The Internal Revenue Service administers the Internal Revenue Code. The Internal Revenue Service administers the Internal Revenue Code enacted by Congress. The Internal Revenue Service administers the Internal Revenue Code enacted by Congress. It is as part of Department of Treasury. That is their responsibility basically. So that is already updated, right? That is already, see, every year whatever after election, see, previously it was Donald Trump during TCGA or Tax Cuts and Jobs Act around 2018 and all, it was Donald Trump. So during that time also there were some new laws that were passed, some new bills that were implemented, right? So as per those particular laws and all, as per that Senate, that government, that needs to be updated. So it lies, the burden of proof lies with IRS. IRS needs to update. Okay, first point, Anna. Second point, the IRS itself does not enact any tax statute. The IRS itself does not enact any tax statute, comma, that is the job of US Congress. The IRS itself does not enact any tax statute. That is the job of US Congress. Next point. The IRS takes specific. The IRS takes the specifics of the laws. The IRS takes the specifics of the laws ratified by Congress and translates them into detailed regulations rules and procedures. and translates them into detailed regulations, rules and procedures. Next point. IRS produces several kinds of documents. The IRS produces several kinds of documents that provide guidance to taxpayers including the following. First point, same in bullet sequence, please write in the same sequence. Treasury regulations, revenue rulings, revenue procedures, private letter rulings, technical advice memoranda, TAM, in bracket TAMs, IRS notices. Understood, right? So these are the documents that any taxpayer should refer to in order to understand the subject matter. What are the query that they have? What is the tax code as per IRS? What is the IRS is saying? This is like official documentation you can consider. So next question: what is the primary authority? What is the primary authority? What is the primary authority for any tax position? What is the primary authority for any tax position? So we have looked at what is internal revenue code in the previous question, right? Internal revenue code is title 26. So this title 26 is as per Congress. So if you are arriving at a specific tax position, like what is your stand on this particular subject, how to arrive, what to consider as a primary authority, to arrive at a specific conclusion, as per this is what. So దీన్ని బట్టి ఇలా ఉంది అని మీరు ఒక ట్యాక్స్ పొజిషన్కి రావాలంటే what is the primary authority that one needs to consider? There are too many documents, too much of everything in IRS. So under Department of Treasury, each one can come up with one particular this thing and then say as per this, as per that. So what is that we want to understand? In order to take a tax position, what do you consider as a tax primary authority? See, somebody might come up as per that IRS notice 2000. See, in India also, as per your judgment in 1998, please refer to that judgment, and then as per that judgment, give me the same judgment ruling also is what we consider, right? See, somebody in hit and run case, let's say Salman Khan's famous hit and run case. So we don't know who drove that car that night, and then some accident happened, and then he left the car, and then they jumped, right? So their attorneys or their lawyers can quote as per your previous judgment. If they are fighting in a Supreme Court, they'll say in 1986 the same case happened. So this is the judgment that you gave. So please consider that particular judgment, and then please rule this particular case in our favor. Like you'll quote something, right? So that way the primary authority for any tax position is IRC, Internal Revenue Code. So what are we saying? Internal Revenue Code holds the primary authority for any taxation, complemented by decisions from US Supreme Court and international tax treaties. We are saying IRC is as per Congress, correct? Congress prepares the tax laws, and US Supreme Court also very rarely deals with tax related cases. US Supreme Court will be very busy and then they will not take up tax cases usually. But if they take up any case, so we can take that particular case as also as a primary authority, like I mentioned. And international tax treaties. What are international tax treaties? Any two countries might have a tax treaty. What is tax treaty? Treaty is an agreement between two countries. Between India and US, we'll have a tax treaty. What is a treaty? Let's suppose you've already paid some kind of tax in India. So as per this particular treaty, you need not pay the same tax again in US, even though you are residing in US for a specific amount of time. In a calendar year, let's suppose you are only staying there for some days and then you have already paid some kind of tax here. So as per Article 21(2), that is the tax treaty number between India and US, you can avoid double taxation. If you have already paid to Indian government, you need not again pay the tax to US on the same income. So that is 1040 NR, and then you can claim foreign earned income exclusion, either as a deduction or a credit you can claim. All that will be there. We will understand in part 1 what are deductions and what are credits. So deductions, it will reduce your taxable income. If you take a deduction, it will reduce your taxable income. But if you take a credit, it will straight away reduce your tax liability. We'll understand what is the difference, because credits again are refundable and non-refundable. Like I've explained, credits can be refundable and non-refundable. If it is refundable, you can get the refund from that particular credit also. My taxable income, say $2,000 unkondi, reduce $2,000. So if you are eligible for child tax credit, $2,000 credit anamata. Government is a creditor. మీకు ఒక బాబు కానీ పాప కానీ ఉంటే ఒక క్వాలిఫైడ్ డిపెండెంట్, యూ కెన్ క్లెయిమ్ $2,000. ఐఎమ్ జస్ట్ గివింగ్ an example. You can take $2,000 credit. Your already taxable income is $2,000. So if you apply this particular credit, straight away your taxable income goes to 0. So the dollar to dollar amount gets reduced by credit. Okay. So you have deviated the topic. What was I explaining? Credit and deductions is okay. Internal Revenue Code is what we are trying to understand. Yeah, treaty. What is tax treaty? So tax treaty can be between US and UK. US is the big daddy. It decides all because as per US dollar everything gets compared, right? Because it's a superpower, correct? So we can take IRC, we can take US Supreme Court decisions, and we can take international tax treaties as primary authority for any tax provision. That is what we are trying to understand. Okay. Please understand, we cannot say as per this particular publication I have quoted so and so. Publications are just for reference. US Department of Treasury or IRS may or may not update the publication every year. So you cannot go back to IRS and say over the phone, I am representing this particular client, and then you are, as per IRS publication 769 or 967, you are so and so, as per your website, I have taken this position. That publication is not a final listing. You cannot quote on that number, is what we are trying to understand. But you can quote on Internal Revenue Code. You understand what I am saying, right? Publications will not be updated every year. Why they are not updating it is as per IRS. They have to update actually. If some new law is passing, a new publication needs to be maintained and then updated, and then it should be in public domain, so that every taxpayer can go to that specific publication and then take a stand. But publications are very dangerous. Some are updated, some are not updated. So we cannot go back to IRS and say, as per this publication, I have taken this position. Okay. Only IRC and Supreme Court decision, if any, as per same. If some you can always fight against IRS, and somebody can take IRS to court, and in the tax court, in the Supreme Court, there are various levels of courts: tax court, district court, and then Supreme Court. In Supreme Court, if so and so between two parties, if IRS has lost and that party has won, so you can go back to IRS and say, as per that Supreme Court decision, I have taken this. That is substantial authority. But publications is not substantial authority. International tax treaties between two governments, you can take that position. Okay. So please write, what is the primary authority for any tax position? The Internal Revenue Code holds the primary authority. Internal Revenue Code holds the primary authority for any tax position. Complemented by decisions of US Supreme Court, and international tax treaties Additionally, below sources can be considered as substantial authority, semicolon. First subbullet point: temporary and final regulations. Second point: court cases. Last point: administrative pronouncements. You can write a small note in red. In red you can write a note. Substantial authority does not include official IRS publications or IRS form instructions As I explained earlier, many IRS publications are not updated every year. Okay. Please write next question. What are treasury regulations? What are treasury regulations? Like I've explained, this can be considered as a substantial authority. First document that we can consider is treasury regulations. In the previous question, we understood treasury regulations, right? So what are we saying? Treasury regulations are US Treasury Department's official interpretation of Internal Revenue Code. This is the official representation of Internal Revenue Code. The Internal Revenue Code authorizes the Secretary of the Treasury to prescribe all needful rules and regulations for enforcement. Okay. See, Department of Treasury, Department, I'll explain. Department of Treasury will have two branches. One is FinCEN, other is IRS. Okay, so Department Treasury, like it's a branch, you can say. So the main branch is Department of Treasury. Under this like a main umbrella, and these two are sub branches under Department of Treasury. So FinCEN, like we have Financial Crimes Enforcement Network is FinCEN. So FinCEN, like I've explained earlier, FBAR is filed with FinCEN network. FBAR is not filed with IRS. Usually what do you file with IRS? Form 1040, right? All the state, see this, the federal structure, whatever I have explained earlier, we file form 1040 with IRS. E-file, we e-file, right? E-file the form 1040 with IRS. But we need to report FBAR also if you are exceeding $10,000, right? I have explained, right? $10,000. Worldwide income, wherever you are sending out money, we need to file FBAR also. But when we are filing FBAR we usually file on form 114. Form 114, we will not file this particular form with IRS. We will file it with house loan. But there are many other forms also, like FATCA. FATCA is again foreign financial reporting. That is also reporting. Okay, I'll explain all that. So that's called Form 8938. This is FinCEN. FinCEN is also a branch out of Department of Treasury. IRS is also coming out of Department of Treasury. Okay, so the main branch is Department of Treasury, and then there is like a main branch. Under this, we have FinCEN and another branches like as part of Department of Treasury. One is IRS and another is FinCEN. So what we are trying to understand here is, when we are saying Treasury regulations are US Department's official interpretation of Internal Revenue Code, the IRC authorizes the Secretary of the Treasury to prescribe all needful rules and regulations for the enforcement of the code. So IRC is the Internal Revenue Code that is prepared by Congress. This particular IRC is Treasury regulations official interpretation. So they prepare IRC. Treasury Department what does it interprets that particular code. Interpretation is your understanding of that particular code. You will interpret. IRC is interpreted by Treasury Department of officials as per the Senate, as per the Congress. That is the making. This is the executing part in plain English. So all regulations are written by the IRS Office of Chief Counsel and approved by US Treasury Secretary. What are they saying? All the regulations are written by IRS Office of the Chief Counsel. Like these are the attorneys of IRS. IRS will have their own internal lawyers. Chief Counsel are the big daddies of attorneys. Like they are They are the ones who interpret the particular laws. And approved by whom? US Treasury Secretary. So we have looked at the Department of Treasury, right? We have looked at Department of Treasury, correct? So in Department of Treasury, we have US Treasury Secretary. He'll be leading this particular department. US Department of Treasury. So if US Secretary of Treasury signs that particular bill, it will be done. This is as part of execution. Treasury regulations, okay? Okay. So the courts give weight to treasury regulations and will generally uphold the regulations so long as the IRS interpretation is reasonable and does not contradict any provisions in the IRC. Treasury regulations are published in the Federal Register. You please remember this particular line. Treasury regulations are published in Federal Register. So there will be a question asking treasury regulations are published in what? In multiple choice question. This will be federal. Treasury regulations are published in Federal Register. We'll show you what is Federal Register. So what we are trying to understand is treasury regulations are US Treasury Department's official interpretation of IRC. Okay. And who authorizes this particular this thing? Secretary, US Treasury Secretary. Once he signs and approves, that will have weight. So if you go to the court also, court will give weight to what? Treasury regulations, as long as this particular interpretation is reasonable and does not contradict anything that is mentioned in IRC. IRC is prepared by Congress. These treasury regulations are the interpretations of Treasury. Treasury is a branch of executing Department of Treasury. They will interpret that particular code. So as long as it is not contradicting the IRC, court will give weightage and then give the ruling in favor of you, as long as you are quoting the treasury regulation. Why? Treasury regulations, as I have given you the sequence of documents that one needs to refer in order to stand a chance. All this we are understanding when we are trying to go against IRS. As a taxpayer, you are saying your tax return is good. You have taken this particular provision from this particular treasury regulation. If you are quoting so and so, and you are trying to take IRS to the court, these are the list of documents that you need to refer. You understand this from that perspective. Am I making sense? Okay. So please write what are treasury regulations. What are treasury regulations? Treasury regulations are the US Treasury Department's official interpretation. US Treasury Department's official interpretation of the Internal Revenue Code. Treasury regulations are the US Treasury Department's official interpretation of Internal Revenue Code. See, all this tax jargon will be first time if you are listening to this, it will be new. Because if you don't understand all these words or verbiage that these guys are using as per the circular 230, they'll be, the questions will not be straightforward or plain when you go to the exam. The mock exam, once you take, even in the mock exam, you'll understand how they are forming the question. So this terminology, you should understand the meaning of it. And if the basics, if you understand, they can come up in any route. You will understand what is that he is asking. So in any question in MCQ, as I have mentioned in the previous classes also, you understand, you first read the last part of it in a question. If it is 3, 4, 5 lines, don't start from the first line. If there is a lengthy question. Just before the 4 multiple choice question answers, you just read the last line. What is he asking? So that you will understand the context of it. Let's suppose internal revenue code is under which, what is the title number is asking. So instead of reading the whole question, he'll give you a use case or some kind of a example, big example. X or Y is working so on, the qualified dependent, this, that, all the information will be there in the question, just to confuse you. But the relevant, what is he asking first of all? So that first you will read the last line of the question, then go back, understand from that perspective, go to the multiple choice answers, eliminate 2 answers, and then out of 2 you have to pick one. This is a elimination strategy. Straight away, if you start reading from the first this thing, in the middle of the question itself you will get confused, because there will be very new words, very new tax language that those guys use. So if you are familiar with all the tax jargon, you will understand the question thoroughly. So just to avoid all that, first you read the last line. After reading the last line, this particular topic, so this context is asking, you will have something in your subconscious. ఇది ఎక్కడో చదివాము, మన నోట్స్ మొత్తం రిఫర్ చేస్తుంటే ఇది ఈ పర్టికులర్ సెక్షన్ 2 పార్ట్ 3లో ఇది ఇక్కడ ఉంది. We understood what is trying to ask, and then go back and then we try to go through the case study, because everything will be with an example. They might ask X or Y is working somewhere, they have so and so, they'll give you a big use case chunk. మధ్యలో ఎక్కడో లైన్లో మీకు ఏదో అర్థం కాదు, so you'll get lost in between all that. So first go through the last part, then understand it from the scenario, and then take out the 2 irrelevant answers. Even if you know the answer, this is a strategy you should follow, because there will be, if all the question you will understand everything thoroughly, in the last there will be except. So he is asking you the wrong answer. The moment you read something, you try to understand it, and then you'll pick the correct answer, but he'll be asking the wrong answer. In the examination hurry, which one is wrong? So clarity of patient 2 minutes kanka each question ki pettukunte, first 1 minute you spend it on question itself, next half minute elimination, you select it in last 15 seconds the answer, majority put it on the question itself. Okay, and once you complete this particular section, straight away book the slot and then clear off the exam. Now you will have 3 years in order to complete. I am not asking you to prepare enrollment exam for 3 years. Within 3 months you should be done. But because you are writing everything down, you are listening to the videos, understanding the topic thoroughly, it will be fresh in your mind. MCQs once or twice cheste 2 to 3 times. I will give you the hard copy also. Hard copy also keep on practicing, so that 90 days of hard work will be done, your career will be set. 90 days of hard work, 30 ఎక్కువ టైం స్పెండ్ చేయద్దు దీని మీద, దాని తర్వాత ఓకే. చలో లెట్స్ రైట్. Treasury regulations are second point. Please wait, second point. Let's write it this way. All regulations are no, whatever I am dictating, please write. The second point I am dictating, all regulations are written by the IRS Office of the Chief Counsel. All regulations are written by the IRS Office of the Chief Counsel and approved by US Treasury Secretary and approved by US Treasury Secretary. Next point, treasury regulations are published in Federal Register. Please write Federal Register in green. Treasury regulations are published in Federal Register. Last point, there are three types of treasury regulations. Last point, there are three types of treasury regulations. There are three types of treasury regulations. One, subullet point, semicolon, subullet point. One, legislative regulations. Legislative regulations. Second, interpretive regulations. Interpretive regulations. And third one, procedural regulations. And procedural regulations. You can add a small note in that. After publication in Federal Register, regulations are organized by subject matter, and codified, CODIFIED, codified in a separate publication, and codified in a separate publication called Code of Federal Regulations. Called Code of Federal Regulations. Please write in red. In brackets, CFR. So what are we saying? Once this is published in Federal Register, these regulations will be with different subject matter, right? It can be with respect to an individual. It can be with respect to an entity. It can be with respect to some representation. So based on each subject matter, this will be categorized and then divided and then made into a separate publication called CFR, Code for Federal Regulations. So please go through what is Federal Register Form. I have already explained you Federal Register Form. As per Federal Register Form, all these are mentioned in where? These treasury regulations are published in where? Federal Register. So you please search what is Federal Register. There is a Federal Register Form. In that, with respect to say, if retirement is there, retirement planning, as per Federal Register Form, what are the treasury regulations you can see? So somebody has taken a Roth IRA, if it is trying to roll over, within 60 days if it is not rolling over, what will happen? Every detail with respect to a specific treasury regulations will be there mentioned in Federal Register Form. So please write a note, please go through Federal Register Form. Please go through Federal Register Form. Like I mentioned earlier, next question, what are the branches of government? So let's understand. Like I have explained earlier, tax law in United States is influenced by three branches of federal government. With legislative branch, that is Congress, holding the primary role in creating the tax law. The executive branch, the president, handles income tax regulations. revenue rulings and revenue procedures. So the IRS is also part of this particular executive branch. Once the law is created by Congress, President signs that particular bill. Once it is signed, his Department of Treasury is also an executive branch. So they will interpret that particular law. Okay. Meanwhile, the judicial branch is also responsible for court decisions and determining the constitutionality of specific tax laws. Okay, like I mentioned, the legislative makes laws, the executive carries out laws, the judicial evaluates laws. So these three are the pillars of a government. Okay. If you want to note it down, just like a note, you can note it down, or you can go to the next question. I've explained earlier also, right? You can just make a note like legislative makes laws, executive carries out laws, judicial evaluates laws. Small note.
idea on
What are question number 7? What are IRS regulations? What are IRS regulations? What are IRS regulations? So we understood as per regulations. We have understood three types of regulations, right? In the previous question. One is legislative regulation, one is interpretive regulation, third is procedural regulation. So these are also in the same order. So legislative regulations is the highest substantial authority, then interpretive, then procedural. Okay, we are trying to understand what are the IRS regulations. So they are saying legislative regulations are formed by Congress to establish the guidelines for a particular provision of the IRS. Okay, a legislative regulations has the highest degree of authority when compared to an interpretive regulation. So when you are saying the legislative regulation has the same authority as a law itself. See, regulation is different and then publication is different. All these are various documents that IRS is creating in different levels of hierarchy. So regulation is the highest this thing. Legislative regulation has the highest authority with respect to, it is considered as a law itself. What is law? Internal Revenue Code. Internal Revenue Code is prepared by Congress. So for a general common man's understanding, they see the Congress members might prepare that particular bill in a general language, but in order to execute it as per the government, it should be in a tax kind of a jargon, tax kind of a understanding. So all the documentation will be done by Department of Treasury, and then they'll have various regulations. The highest precedence is Treasury regulation. So Treasury regulation interprets the IRC. IRC is prepared by Congress. So for a common man, legislative regulation is the highest degree of authority in order to take a tax position. So all this we are understanding from a tax position perspective. You see, you are filing a return at the end of the tax year. So you are going through some kind of a for cryptocurrency or for virtual currency, what exactly are they charging as part of tax, you want to understand. So if you are of some understanding, and then as per your understanding, you have referred some documentation of some previous tax case, and you want to take IRS to the court, you want to sue IRS. So there should be some kind of proper documentation from your end in order to withstand your argument, let's say in a tax court or even in front of IRS. You cannot say publication, as per this publication, as per your form instruction, I have done this and that. There should be a formidable authority. You have to take a substantial authority kind of a position on specific area of tax code. So which one you will take? The legislative regulation. It is equivalent to the tax law itself. So what are we saying? In general, legislative regulation carry the same authority as the law itself. However, a legislative regulation may be overturned if any of the following conflicts apply. It is outside the power delegated to US Treasury, if it conflicts with a specific statute, if it is deemed unreasonable by the courts. And see, we are saying legislative regulation is the highest degree of authority, it is equivalent to tax law. But even legislative regulation can also be overturned if any conflict apply. What are the cases? 3 cases. One is if it is outside the power of delegated to the US Treasury. So whatever is outside the domain of US Treasury, in that case this particular regulation can be overturned. And if it we understood what is statute of limitations earlier, right? Statute of limitations, as per statute of limitations, if it is under that particular statute, this legislative regulation is there, it is okay. But it is conflicting with the specific statute. As per this specific statute, this is valid for a period of 3 years. Let's say you are amending your tax return. Amending is correcting of tax return. So you cannot go back to 6 years back and then change your tax return. In 2014, I want this particular return to be amended because that time I have overlooked this particular credit. నాకు ఆ క్రెడిట్ వచ్చేది ఉంది, ఆ డిపెండెంట్ తప్పు క్లెయిమ్ చేశాను, నాకు ఆ డబ్బులు రావాలని చెప్పి ఇప్పుడు వెళ్ళారనుకోండి ఐఆర్ఎస్ దగ్గరికి. యాజ్ పర్ ఐఆర్ఎస్ స్టాట్యూట్ ఇట్ సేస్ యూ కెన్ గో బ్యాక్ ఓన్లీ అప్ టు 3 years previously as per its statute. It is written in its statute, IRS statute of limitation, it is written something. And you are saying, as per legal authority, I will go to that particular this thing and then you go and amend. It is conflicting with the statute, right? You understand what I am saying? Amend చేయొచ్చు for the past 2 years. ఇండియాలో 1 year. So what example that I am trying to tell you is, it should not conflict with a specific statute that is already created by IRS. Okay? And if it is deemed unreasonable by the courts, if the court says there should be some kind of substance to it. ఏది పడితే అది చేసేసి మీరు as per this thing you consider this అంటే court should consider it as reasonable. Okay? One more point is, the IRS is bound by its regulations. So these regulations are created by whom? Regulations. Chief of Council is again IRS only, right? So Department of Treasury is again IRS, right? So IRS is interpreting that particular code, IRC. So IRS is bound by its regulations. ఎందుకు వాళ్ళు రాసుకున్నదే వాళ్ళే చూపిస్తాను, కాకపోతే ఎవరు ఇస్తున్నారు కదా. సో IRS is bound by its regulations, but the courts are not. Court does not function as per this regulation. Court does not understand these particular regulations. Court has its own judicial wing. Court is, we discussed 3 wings, right? One is legislative, one is executive, judicial. Judiciary has its own law. That is something altogether. So tax codes are bound by that particular code. IRS is bound by its regulations. Okay? So US Treasury regulations are authorized by law, but US courts are not obligated to follow any of the IRS administrative interpretations. Okay? So we have 2 regulations basically. One is, see, instead of 2 we can say 3. We have 3 kind of regulations. One is proposed regulations. Before IRS comes up with any regulation, what it does is it proposes a regulation. What is proposing of regulation? Regulation is something like their understanding of the tax law. Whatever is enacted, whatever is formed by Congress, they will interpret that particular tax law and then write a regulation. సో ఈ రెగ్యులేషన్ రాస్తున్నాము, ఈ పర్టికులర్ ట్యాక్స్ అని చెప్పి ఫస్ట్ ప్రపోజ్ చేస్తాం. ప్రపోజ్ చేస్తే ఏంటి, ఎవరైతే సబ్జెక్ట్ మ్యాటర్ ఎక్స్పర్ట్స్ ఉంటారో, ఎవరైతే సీనియర్ అకౌంటెంట్స్ ఆర్ నేషనల్ అసోసియేషన్ ఆఫ్ ఎన్రోల్డ్ ఏజెంట్స్ అనే దర్ ఇస్ అ బాడీ వేర్ ఆల్ ద ఎన్రోల్డ్ ఏజెంట్స్ go there and then subscribe and then become a members. They are subject matters in terms of tax matters. All enrolled agents know tax matters in and out. They'll do some kind of research, right? So So before putting out as a temporary regulation or final regulation, they'll propose this particular regulation, they'll ask for opinion. What do you think if I put this kind of regulation? What is your point of view is what they'll ask. Straight away they'll not make a law, the IRS. So first is propose just a regulation, then a temporary regulation, then they'll make it as final. So temporary regulation will be in effect for 3 years. Initially, in order to make, before making it permanent, that's a sequence they'll follow. First proposed, then temporary, then final. Temporary will be for 3 years. They'll understand in these 3 years what is happening. So the final regulations are issued when the regulation becomes an official treasury decision. Final regulations are effective immediately upon publication in Federal Register. So all the treasury regulations will be published where? Federal Register. Federal. They published this particular treasury regulation because common man needs to access that particular document or not. మీరు ఎక్కడికి వెళ్ళి ఎత్తుతారు? Federal Register. In Federal Register, all the treasury regulations will be published. Okay. So final regulations have the effect of law. Okay. So you can go ahead and then pause the video and then please write down what are IRS regulations. I am going to the next question, please. Okay. All these recordings will be there in your login, and then you can pause the video and then write down the notes. Due to time crunch, I'll be explaining the concept and moving forward. Okay. All right. Next question: what are revenue rulings and revenue procedures? What are revenue rulings and revenue procedures? Question number 8. What are revenue rulings and revenue procedures? So these are basically, when revenue rulings and procedures, these are not binding in tax code, but this can be used as a guidance for taxpayers to avoid some accuracy related penalties. Accuracy related penalty I have explained earlier also, right? Say trust fund recovery penalty, accuracy related penalty, like failure to file, failure to pay. If trust fund recovery penalty is 100% penalty, like you are an employer and then you have withheld taxes of your employee throughout the year, but then you are not remitting it to IRS, you are keeping it to yourself. So that is trust fund recovery penalty. So all those accuracy related penalties can be avoided if you take revenue ruling as a guidance. What is revenue ruling basically? Revenue rulings are and revenue procedures are, it typically states the IRS position. A revenue ruling typically states the IRS position, while a revenue procedure provides instructions concerning that position. Revenue ruling, when IRS takes a position, that position will be explained by revenue ruling, and the instruction that follow in order to take that the IRS has taken that position will be revenue procedure. So both, IRS has taken a position on a specific tax subject, so that is called revenue ruling, and revenue procedure is the instructions in order to follow that particular revenue ruling is revenue procedure. One is linked to the other. Just remember one thing: revenue ruling is the IRS position. Revenue ruling ante IRS position. A particular dan mein IRS position enti. What is your position? IRS position is revenue ruling. And revenue procedure is the instructions in order to get to that ruling. For every form there will be instructions. Under form 1040, if you scroll down, there will be instructions that will be given to taxpayer. Same thing for revenue ruling, there will be instructions. Those instructions will be called revenue procedures. This will be new language to anyone who is studying this particular subject. Even though people who are preparing form 1040 or form 1120 or business entities or whatever, most of this terminology is IRS specific. So this will be new. So revenue ruling, revenue procedure, substantial authority, all these treasury regulations, all these will be something new, but then you will get used to it. Okay, because there will be questions where in line 3 or line 4 these words will be included. You should understand when somebody is saying that's a revenue ruling. Revenue ruling means IRS position on this particular subject matter. What is IRS position is revenue ruling. The instructions to get to revenue ruling is revenue procedure. Okay. So what we are trying to understand is revenue ruling is not binding in tax court or any other US court. However, revenue rulings can be used by taxpayers as guidance. This can be used as guidance to avoid accuracy related penalty. So usually what happens? If there is a revenue ruling, the numbering will be revenue ruling, that year and the number. That is a format that they follow. 2023 లో ఒక రెవెన్యూ రూలింగ్ వచ్చింది అనుకోండి, ఐఆర్ఎస్ వాళ్ళు రెవెన్యూ రూలింగ్ ఇచ్చారు ఈ స్పెసిఫిక్ మ్యాటర్ మీద. సో ఏమైనా ఉంటుంది 2023, 1. దట్ మీన్స్ దట్ ఈస్ ద ఫస్ట్ రెవెన్యూ రూలింగ్ ఇన్ ద స్పెసిఫిక్ ఇయర్. 2026 లో వచ్చింది, 2026-2. బికాస్ 2026 లో ఫస్ట్ వచ్చి ఉంటుంది, అందులో 2, 3, 4. దట్స్ ద నేమింగ్ కన్వెన్షన్ దట్ దే ఫాలో. ఓకే. Next question, what is technical advice memorandum? What is technical advice memorandum? What is the percentage it's showing? 62.
64.
Okay. What is technical advice memorandum? See, technical advice memorandum, the first thing, if you listen to this word, the first thing that it should come in your mind is, this particular memorandum is something internal to IRS. Technical advice memorandum. Memorandum. You heard of a word, Marx memorandum, right? Our college, universities, Marx memorandum. So, if IRS, there is something internal to IRS director might ask the chief counsel of IRS, like the chief office, there will be group of attorneys that will be there for IRS. So IRS ki kuda oka legal team untunda. They are the subject matter experts basically. So the IRS director asked the chief counsel of lawyers on their opinion on a specific matter. That is called technical advice memorandum. So these chief counsel will advise on a specific matter to IRS on the request of IRS director. IRS director is asking for a specific matter opinion with a chief counsel group of lawyers. So they will prepare a documentation that is technical in nature, advising on a specific matter that is requested by director. That is technical advice memorandum, TAM. So if you look up in Google TAM example, TAM notices, TAM. So TAM is, let's suppose in collections wing or in appeals wing, IRS has different branches, right? So in collections, every time this particular issue is coming up, so how do I deal with this particular collections issue? Can you please prepare a technical advice memorandum is what director is asking. What is collections basically? You are a taxpayer. You are owing a amount to IRS. You are due. You are not paying your due. What happens? What is the last date to pay the due for your year in the current tax year? April 15th is the last date to pay your due. You understand due, right? If you file your tax return, I said 3 things will happen. If you file your tax return in a current year, 3 things will happen. What are the things?
Filing, taxable income unte, tax ante zero.
3 things will happen. One is either you will get a refund, 2 you owe taxes, 3 nothing happens. Nothing happens when no due, no refund. So if you are due, you need to pay tax to the government. If you are in surplus, government has taken a lot of taxes from you every month, you will get a refund. Ante kada? What is refund? Your money is lying with IRS tax free, interest free loan ichesanu IRS. So if you are giving money to IRS, what does it mean? Your tax planning is not proper. Every month you are earning something. Out of that, some of the amount is withheld by IRS. So federal withheld, all this computation will be done on form W4. Remember, form W4 is where you declare it with your employer what all withholdings should be taken out. So if your withholdings are more out of your paycheck, you end up paying extra amount of taxes to IRS. Has already withheld all your income. So that money is there with IRS. They will not pay any interest to you. So while filing, already you have withheld so much this thing, so they will give you a refund. That is what happens in terms of refund, right? So 3 things will happen. One is
Due, refund, nothing.
or nothing will happen. Okay. So what is the context?
Group of people.
Collections department. So collections department, what is collections department? If you are owing something to the IRS, okay. So the IRS revenue officers, the IRS people, they'll come and then they'll come and you have to pay your taxes by April 15th. Let's suppose you did not pay your tax. You are due $10,000. You did not pay by April 15th. First thing they'll send out a notice. 30-day letter is what they'll send out. Even after 30 days you are not paying, they'll send out a 90-day letter. 90 days letter. Even then you are not paying. The moment after April 15th, every day you will incur interest and penalty. 15th కల్లా పే చేయకపోతే నెక్స్ట్ డే నుంచి మీకు ఇంట్రెస్ట్ పడుతుంది, ఆ అమౌంట్ మీద పెనల్టీ పడుతుంది. Failure to file, failure to pay, there will be 2 penalties. If you did not file itself, it will be 5%. Failure to file is 5%, failure to pay is 0.5% on the outstanding. So again penalty will be there. It will accrue continuously. మీరు ఒక 1 year pay చేయలేదు. That 10,000, let's suppose, has become 50,000. 5 years you did not pay. What will happen? IRS will come and they'll levy, they'll seize your property as part of recovery. So for every this thing there's a small concept called, see, in collections department one particular this thing is coming up again and again. They want a solution. Why? So that public is made aware of it, and then that particular issue will not be repeated. That particular documentation who will provide? The chief of council. IRS director will ask the chief of council to provide a technical advice memorandum on a specific issue. That is TAM. Understood? A TAM is written guidance furnished by IRS Office of Chief Counsel upon the request of an IRS director. Okay. A TAM is issued in response to a technical or procedural question that develops during examination of a taxpayer's return. During examination of a taxpayer's return, if some technical this thing is required, technical documentation is required, some procedural question is required, then a TAM is issued. Consideration of a taxpayer's claim for refund or credit. A request for a determination letter. So technical advice memoranda are issued only on closed transactions and provide the interpretation of proper application of tax laws, tax treaties, regulations, revenue rulings or other precedents. Okay, understood, right? Next question. What is PLR? Private letter ruling. What is What is PLR? Let's suppose a taxpayer has a specific question regarding a tax law. He did not yet file. Before filing itself, he has a specific question on a specific tax law. What he does is, he requests the IRS on that specific tax law. He will request a private letter asking for a IRS help on how to interpret this particular case. How do I go about it? Give me your advice. So that based on that I will file. That is one-to-one between IRS and that taxpayer. So a taxpayer has a specific question regarding tax law. He may request a private letter ruling from the IRS. A PLR is a written statement issued to a taxpayer that interprets and applies tax law to the taxpayer's specific case. Other taxpayers or IRS personnel may not rely on a PLR as a precedent. What are they saying? If you have requested a PLR with IRS, I can't go back and say, as per Karunakar's PLR, you also do me this thing. A PLR is one-to-one interaction between IRS and then you. Yours is a specific case. I am a different taxpayer, you are a different taxpayer. So PLR is one-to-one. So I can't quote your particular PLR and then take it as a precedent. Understood? Because your tax specific scenario is different, mine is different. So it is only subject to a single person is what you are trying to say, PLR. A PLR is legally binding on the IRS. It is only binding on the IRS for the particular taxpayer who requested the ruling. Okay. PLRs are made public after the taxpayer's private identifiable information has been redacted. What is redacted? Redacted is removed or blacked out. They are saying PLR, let's suppose you have asked for a PLR with the IRS. So your PLR will be kept in a public domain, removing your personally identifiable information, your name, your social number, social security number, your phone number, all the demographics will be removed out and then put it in public. Why? Just to have public information. Everybody can access that particular PLR. But nobody can say that take that PLR and go to IRS as per that PLR. You did that to Mr. Karunakar, you do that for me. PLR is private. But just to have an understanding, it will be kept in a public domain. So a private letter ruling is not free. The minimum fee for a PLR ranges from $10,000 and up. We are asking for a PLR with IRS. IRS will charge you $10,000 in order to give you a tax opinion on that specific matter. So there are no free lunches in this world. Free lunch ever better. Everything is business. So a specific thing ki they'll ask for $10,000. $10,000 and then 8 lakhs. Okay. What is Internal Revenue Manual? Question number 11. What is Internal Revenue Manual? What is Internal Revenue Manual? So IRM, in brackets IRM, is a single official compilation of the policies, procedures, instructions and guidelines relating to the administration and operations of the IRS. Internal Revenue Manual it contains all the policies, procedures, instructions and guidelines related to the administration and operations of the IRS. It is primarily used by the IRS employees to guide them in all the facets of operations. So, when you are calling IRS for a specific issue, they will give you an advice, right? Based on what? Based on this IRM, Internal Revenue Manual. They'll have this Internal Revenue Manual. Based on that Internal Revenue Manual, it will have all the policies, procedures, instructions and guidelines. They'll try to guide. All the IRS employees refer to this particular IRM. Okay. It is primarily used by IRS employees to guide them in all facets of operations. The manual currently includes sections on the processing of tax submission, examinations, collection and appeals. The IRM is a public information and can be searched and read directly on the IRS website. Okay? Understood, right? Question number 12. What are IRS publications and forms? What are IRS publications and forms? What are IRS publications and forms? We said in enrolled agent exam we are studying only the federal structure, right? Not the state. So the federal tax law, when we say federal tax law, the publication, the only publication that we need apart from our notes is, if you have time, go through publication 17. Publication 17. If you just type publication 17 in Google, it explains everything with related to income tax return for individuals. It explains income tax return for individuals. Publication 17. So nothing comes out of that particular publication. If you are thorough with publication 17, take the printout of publication 17, make a booklet, go through the publication 17 thoroughly. For individuals, everything is taken care. Individuals meaning part 1, paper 1. So as per what are IRS publications, the IRS shares information to both taxpayers and preparers through its official publication. For example, publication 17 covers a general rule for filing a federal income tax return for individuals. Right? Although the information in publication is drawn from IRC, Treasury regulation, other primary sources of authority, publications themselves are not considered to have substantial authority, like I have explained earlier. Because they might be updated, may not be updated. But you cannot go back to IRS and say, update. That's their choice. We can refer to it, but it can be held as a substantial authority. Taxpayers and preparers may not rely on guidance issued by IRS publications to avoid accuracy related penalty. Okay. What is taxpayer advocate service? Question number 13. What is taxpayer advocate service? So this is what I have shown you. This is the Internal Revenue Manual. Okay. So it has various departments like information technology, submission processing, examination processing, collecting processing, appeals, criminal investigation. So all that is there as part of IRM. IRM is Internal Revenue Manual. You can go to the IRS site and then search for Internal Revenue Manual. As per this manual only, IRS officers or anybody who is picking up your phone, they will refer to this particular manual and then guide you. Okay. What is taxpayer advocate service? See, if you have requested n number of times, you have called n number of times to IRS and then you are requesting them, please reconsider on my tax position. You are you're not solving my problem. I do not owe this time, but you are not considering my request. Please relook at my particular tax return position. You have called a number of times, but they are not responding. They are thinking they are the big daddy. Nobody can ask them. So in that case, ఎవరు పట్టించుకోకపోతే పట్టించుకునేది taxpayer advocate service. IRS, if they are saying they are ignoring your request, you will have to go to taxpayer advocate service. The taxpayer advocate service is an independent organization within the IRS whose goal is to help taxpayer resolve the problems with the IRS. A taxpayer may be eligible for TAS assistance when he is facing a number of different situations involving economic harm or significant delays in resolving a tax issue. If you are facing some problem in order to resolve your tax issue, you should go to tax advocate service, taxpayer advocate service, TAS. The taxpayer advocate service is free and confidential and is available for both businesses as well as individuals. A taxpayer will submit form 911. Submit the form in order to request for taxpayer advocate service. So just because you don't ring up first time and then they are not picking up, you can't go to taxpayer advocate service. There should be substantial proof that you need to submit to form 911 also. Okay. 911 is emergency, right? In US, is emergency number like 100. Same thing, 911 is also emergency. Like requesting taxpayer advocate service, the form number you can remember that way. Emergency. అది ఎమర్జెన్సీ నెంబర్ ఇది కూడా ఎమర్జెన్సీ కదా ఐఆర్ఎస్ వాళ్ళు లేకపోతే నీకు కూడా ఎమర్జెన్సీ taxpayer advocate service వాళ్ళకి కొంచెం చూడు బాబు పట్టించుకోవట్లేదు అని చెప్పచ్చు. ఓకే, ఫామ్ 911 should be filed in order to get the taxpayer advocate service assistance. So it is an independent organization. Okay, so unit 5 is the last unit in this section. I think this is the last unit, the collections. We'll go through this particular collections chapter in the next class. We'll close this particular chapter in the next class. With that, we'll be done with section 2. Okay? Okay, that's it for today. Thank you.